Hi, and welcome to Business Belters. In this episode, we're going to be talking about acquisition and mergers. This is part of the Business Belters long-term business strategy series. I'm sure that you'll find this very interesting, and tune in and listen to more.
Hi and welcome to Business Belters. I'm John Loyden, and on today's episode we're talking about acquisitions and mergers, which is quite interesting. So there's different ways of building value into a business and scaling a business, and as part of this long-term series we wanted to look at some of the ways that we have done in the past. So acquisitions is something I've done in full or in part, and I've also went through a merger. So because I've had that experience in the background, I thought it would be good to share some of the experience with it, positives and negatives, and also look at other businesses that are out there in the market. There's quite a lot of digital businesses, but this is not exclusive to the digital sector. Like, as we know, lots of businesses, whether you're in financial services, accounting, there's lots of kind of like acquisitions happening. I know that for myself speaking, I became aware of this probably around about 3 years ago. Is when I first kind of like my ears perked up in the sense of like, oh, that's a thing, I'm interested in that. I used to think that acquisitions were done by multimillionaires, people that had vast sums of wealth, and I've came to kind of realise that even the people that I do know that are multimillionaires that do this for a living, they don't do this with their own funds. And that's interesting, because that kind of shows you that probably the perception of acquisitions is very different to its reality. So that's not to say that you can't buy a business for cash, like say Facebook that bought Instagram famously for £1 billion, £1 for every image asset that was on the platform. But that's actually not the most common type of acquisition. I think most common is probably the type that I do, and probably the type that we're interested in kind of discussing as well. Anyone can have great money and buy something, but it takes a bit of skill and a bit of sort of like different thinking to buy businesses by another means. So yeah, that's a kind of a wee segue into the episode. But what do you think, Mark? Where do you want to start today?
Yeah, do you know one of the ones that's really was interesting that I learned? Because I was always wanting to acquire businesses and buy businesses, I always thought that I had to save up money, and I was like, oh, right, I need to put all this money aside. And then have people say, you don't actually need to use your own money to buy the business. You know that? You don't.
What do you mean though? How do you buy it with your own money?
How do you buy your own money?
So just, I'm sorry to interrupt you as well, but what was your perception when somebody said that to you? Like, you don't need to use your own money, like kind of...
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was like, what?
How does that work?
Yeah.
What kind of magic is that?
Yeah. And I think that's what's actually quite interesting, that you then learn that so many investors never actually use their own money to acquire businesses. As it is such a common thing. And I always just thought it's because you hear in the news that, you know, as you said, Facebook bought Instagram. You know, you hear these things, and that's why you go, oh no, I need to save up all my money to do that. But actually you don't necessarily need to do it that way. You know, there's ways that you can loan the money, you can get angel investors to help you out with the money. You can actually, like, you know, build something into the equity and build money into the equity of the business as well. Also, you know, one of the businesses that we work with, it's another agency. It's quite good to see that they merge and they take over lots of other businesses as well. There was one just that was based here in Glasgow, and I was working with them, and then that business came in. And it sort of merged. It took all their staff, but then just changed the brand eventually down the line. Yeah. But it's taking the staff, it's taking the clients, and then it's just kind of swallowed up that business. But it's just such a fast way to grow the business as well. It's such a fast way to expand. And then it's like, yeah, we've now got a Glasgow office. We've got a London office, a Glasgow office, and it's just like, you go, wow, these guys are absolutely massive. But they've just done it in a different way. I think it's also be good to kind of talk about, you know, taking over businesses. Like, for instance, if it was me and you're very, very good at technical and software abilities, whereas I'm more on the marketing kind of side. Could we make a sort of super agency that's like very tech and
that's exciting. Like, you're spot I think in that. What?
But you know, you make this super agency, and that's like, wow, like the value that people are going to get from that, going, actually I don't need to then go to this person and this person, I actually just need to go to this one big super agency, and that's actually quite good to, and a quite good idea to kind of see. And I'd also want to kind of find out about like toupee, not the toupee that's your wig.
The better kind, the dangerous one.
The dangerous one. Yeah. But yeah, about that, you know, so you have a lot of experience with it. You know, you have acquired businesses, you've merged with businesses as well, and I know from talking to you, I learned a load about it all, and I didn't know all the pains and the problems. So what, I suppose then, if you want to kind of share, like, what's the kind of big risks and the pains and things that you kind of go through, and you know, things that people should be watching out for.
So I think just to kind of like anchor it into a bit of a story as well. So the first kind of acquisition that I had done was a division of a company. So opportunities come about by different means, but kind of similar to if you put out into the world that you're an investor, people will come to you with investment opportunities. That's just a fact that happens. I changed that on my LinkedIn, and a lot of people are like, why are you putting out you're an investor? And it's like, I hate calling myself that, but it actually does attract opportunities. So I've had more discussions like this in the last, say, 8 months than I've had any time previous, because now I'm communicating that this is something that's a big focus for me. The whole reason of me having like 4 companies underneath Hybrid Anchor forming up, that's a big change for me in the sense of like how I'm focusing on it. But even going back, so this is jumping back now probably about 3 years-ish, probably about 3 years, we were approached by a company that was kind of saying, look, we're closing down an office, you know, this is what we're kind of looking. So it actually came about almost as like a support contract. So it was an opportunity that came in as like a sales lead, if you will. But then it became like a, look, we're closing down the division. And I'm like, why are you closing down the division? And it's like, oh, well, we don't want to manage it. And you're kind of thinking, that's going to create a pool of clients, a pool of staff, great sort of talented Scottish staff. We can have our pick of the staff, the assets, the things we want, the machinery they would need. And you would get it for a song because they're basically discarding it. So it's almost like you saying, I'm going to renovate my living room and I'm just going to bin all the furniture and chuck it out the back. And you're like, you kidding on? This is like a brand new couch and there's nothing wrong with that telly. And what about that fireplace? That's like a marble fireplace. And you're going, yeah, that's not what I want. I'm going all modern. And you're thinking, but it doesn't mean the stuff in the room is not with value.
Yep.
And likewise, if my house is more like what your old living room looked like, I could get those assets for next to nothing because you're not looking at it as something you want. And people in the Western culture are super bad at that. We discard value all the time because we're like, we can't be bothered. So I've got a £2,500 camera, can't be bothered selling it, sits in the cupboard, it does nothing. Yeah. And you're thinking, you're mad. It's so mad when you think about it. So anyway, that opportunity came about and I was thinking, would you be interested in us acquiring the division? Like, what would that look like? Yeah, that could be interesting. But then as I kind of broke it down, I started bringing some of the kind of challenges into the tab board, like the alternative board, which me and Mark are members of. But we were kind of analysing it and I wanted to kind of see, is there any risks in doing something like this? So I can see the clear benefit in how it will add substantial revenue. And I think it did. It added something like £22,500 per month in revenue. So I mean, it's not to be sniffed at. It's quite a sizable opportunity. But when I looked at it, I was thinking, well, what are the risks? And it was said to me, somebody said, be mindful of a hospital ship. And I'm like, what the hell is a hospital ship? Like, it's not a normal thing to say.
It's like, you just picture it, don't you? A hospital?
A hospital ship. And I'm like, a hospital ship? And I'm like, what the hell is that? And it says, so what to be mindful of is when people sell divisions or companies, they will basically take all their worst employees, people that are like... really sort of like dangerous HR kind of reportings. It's the kind of people that would say, I'm depressed, they were stigmatised because race, like a lot of kind of dangerous conversations, and then they bulk them all into that department saying, oh, they were always in IT, and then you inherit the company. So one of the things to be mindful of is when you acquire a division or a company, you have to legally obligate their contracts of what they were there. So here's a bit of irony for me. So the company that buys them is 3 years old, but you have to pay a redundancy package that's 32 years because that's what the guy had been with the company. That could kill and cripple a small business because you're not established to that degree. and I've not made the profit off that guy's back. That guy's new, squeaky clean and shiny to me. So when you're looking at it, you need to ask for the HR records, you need to actually be mindful of who you're taking on, and that process is called to-pay. So to-pay is their contractual rights getting moved over into the new entity, and it's like their contract. So if their contract says that they have to get 20% of their wages a pension, and that's not what your staff get, they're in a special case. So it's not to say you need to do it with your other staff, but obviously you can imagine the problems it causes. Like, wait, why is Mark on like this amazing pure golden handcuffs contract, and I'm on this like, you know, don't even care about you, kick you in the bin contract? And you're thinking, well, you were in a company that was a startup, he's in a company that's came from a much larger organisation that had a kind of corporate structure. But every mistake that they have made, so let's say I've disciplined you and I've not put it in your record, or that you've, I don't know, struck a customer or swore down the phone at someone, that actually, if it doesn't get logged as their HR, you're still hit for it, you're still liable for it, because you're basically absorbing the liability. And that's like the kind of dangerous side of acquisitions, where a lot of people that I notice, they don't talk about that stuff, and you're thinking, but that is a really important thing. And for me, it was a huge lesson. So prior to us signing the deal, I actually went into the company and I said, I want to see a HR record of every single employee that we might potentially take into the company. And I could totally see the HR guy looking at me as if like, oh, okay, like why are we asking that? And I was like, yeah, it doesn't matter why I'm asking that, I want to see the HR records, and I'd like it for the entire duration of when they were here. I would also like all the staff to go through a medical prior to us taking anyone on that we decide to keep as part of the deal like that. And I'd also like a clause in there that if we need to make them redundant within 6 months of taking them on, that you shoulder that cost rather than us. So I kind of like orchestrated it based on the information I'd found out. And to me, I think that was a smart move, but I would not have made that move in the negotiation if I hadn't understood what a hospital ship was. So one comment actually allowed me to protect myself a lot more from that opportunity. And it turned out that that was a good thing to do anyway. But now anytime I acquire a business, it's one of the first things I think about is how do I protect myself from the risk. But you kind of don't know what you don't know. So it's very much about getting around people that acquire businesses and then listening to the horror stories. So if I look at, you know, like you talk about your friend circle, if I look at the kind of 20 to 30 people I hang about with now, every single one of them acquire businesses. And I don't think that that's a accidental thing. I think that's me pulling myself into, this is where I want to learn, this is what I want to know more about, and I'm going to learn it faster by being around people that are doing it all the time.
And would you build a team around you when you're going in to acquire businesses? Would you have somebody that's kind of your right hand man, that's when you're involved in negotiations and things?
I think it depends on the scale, to be honest with you, Mark. So like if I was acquiring, so like I used to think that acquisitions were always done with businesses that are either smaller or equal to where you're at. So if our company turns over, say, £2 million, you buy an agency that's roughly the same size, shape, or less than what you are, and that's fine. A lot of people do that. If I was acquiring something bigger than me, I would definitely want to have a team in place so I could kind of run by, because there might be larger challenges or things I'm not aware of because my business is not quite at that scale yet. So with those, like the ones that I was talking about there, that was that case. Like there was definitely, I had people to run that by. I ran it by the accountant, I ran it by my coach, I ran it by other people that I knew, I brought it to the board. So I kind of like tried to protect myself as good as I could for what I could afford to do at the time. Longer term, so I think right now, like the opportunities I'm reviewing, I'm looking at, I'm reviewing them myself, and I'm using the accountant, I'm using my coach, I'm using like my kind of network to sense check it. And if there's specific problems where I'm like, that might be really dangerous, then I'll bring in the resource as a consultant to do it in an ad hoc kind of manner. So I don't currently have a pipeline full of those opportunities. I've probably got maybe a handful of opportunities like that, like kind of 4 or 5, and of them I'm taking forward 4. Some of them I've germinated, so they're just new businesses, they're not acquisitions, and then other ones is taking equity stakes in companies. But as I scale that part of the business out, my intention will be to basically build that dream team, if you want to call it that. And I kind of look at it as almost like that's what the company becomes. So the group's company is these team of people and me, and their job is to basically review opportunities. And it's probably not something like a full-time gig. It'll likely be, you're an accountant, I'd like your kind of focus on this, and I'll pay you like a kind of non-exec. Like you'll be paid for each one you review, or whatever it happens to be. I know there's a guy I read about, Jonathan Jay, and he builds quite a lot of wealth through acquisitions, and that's exactly it. He'll pay even up to like £25,000 to properly audit a business.
Yeah.
But it's because of how brutally dangerous it is to actually bring in a business. I can't remember the guy's name, so I'll just tell the story. But there was a guy that basically acquired a business, really sort of affluent guy here in Scotland, and he basically done all his due diligence, thought it was absolutely brilliant, took the business on, and then realised it had a VAT bill due, and it was like due like imminently. So like he just acquired the business, and then he had to pay this whatever it was. And I'm thinking, see, that's the kind of shit you want to avoid. Yeah. You don't want to be taking someone on and it's like, by the way, Mark, I used to pay 25k for this VAT, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like everything's a song, you're like kind of about to pop the champagne, and now you're looking at it and saying, why did nobody clock that?
Yeah.
You know?
Because I heard the same story as well, and it's like he had to get his mum or something, he had to get his mum.
I just square him up for the money. Like, but I mean, that's a great story, and I do love that. Like, there's a sort of genuineness to it, but at the end of the day is, who wants a conversation where it's like, tomorrow you need to put 25k in, and you're like, wait, what? Come again? What do you mean?
I've just paid.
I just bought the house. What do you mean? It's like, yeah, but now you need to deal with the wood rot. Like, where's the reports on the wood rot? Like, you know, what's going on? And I think like it's definitely a dangerous game, but it's the fastest way of scaling a business. By, like hands down. Like you could be the most charming, amazing, eccentric influencer person in the world, and literally somebody could just literally scale right past you by acquiring businesses. You spoke about mergers as well, like that's another way of doing it. One of the businesses I looked to buy probably about 4 years ago was Broadband Cloud Solutions here in Glasgow, and they're an agency that have like an IT division in it as well, which is a bit of a strange setup, but I've seen it a couple of times now. But at the time I'm like, why is IT in with this? So when I looked at that business, they actually wanted to just keep merging. That was the way they grew, and I'm thinking, but you're making it more and more complicated. There's like 10 directors inside, well, probably isn't 10 directors, but you know, there's more directors than normal for a company the scale they're at, and it's because of that they've just merged into all these other businesses. But when I was looking to buy them, I was like, right, I'll buy the agency part of it, I'll merge that flat into our infrastructure, and then I'll sell the IT part to one of my IT clients or a contact in the IT market. I'll probably be able to make the bulk of what I buy in with the sale of the IT part to an IT specialist, which will see more value in the IT element. Whereas I would have played the card that, well, I can keep it and it's revenue, but ultimately in the back of my head, I don't want it. I don't want the IT bit. It's not what I do. I don't really understand that side of the business, and I can't be bothered trying to learn it for the sake of just making sure that runs correctly. But that again was an interesting sort of conversation where you're thinking, right, here's an opportunity, but that was another one where I thought the deal won't work out because there's too many directors involved, and you're thinking, I don't really want the kind of the headache of trying to like make sure these 7 people are happy or whatever. I want to just have like a nice simple transaction where it's you and one other director, as long as they're given what they feel the business is worth or a deal struck. Happy days, you know. Yeah,
because I think that's the thing with mergers, isn't it? There's lots of examples out there, like, is it Morris and Spottiswoode or something like that? I think it's like construction or but it's like, it was like Morris and then it was like Spottiswoode, and then it's like the names like joined together. And I think as well, like the marketing agency Made Brave, did they merge with that company Campfire in Edinburgh?
I'm not sure the backstory of it. That was an interesting one actually. So from what I can see from the outside, and I could be massively wrong because I've not studied it in detail, but from what I could see is that company offered a lot of skills that would complement Made Brave's portfolio. So as a company, as an acquisition, it's a good target that would open up the Edinburgh market more. You've got a kind of base there, and it's a good complement to what they're already building. And if you look at a lot of these guys that acquire companies, they're looking to build on the back of their pre-existing empire. So it's like, does this fit in with what it is? So if you're Disneyland, it makes sense for you to buy into media companies or toy companies, or because it complements what you do. But like if you're in, say, like what we do for a living, and it's like, I'll buy a chemical factory, I actually did look at buying a plumbing business. Like, I'm not even kidding on it. I looked at buying a plumbing business, not plumbing like fixing pipes, but supplying wholesale the kind of parts. And I thought, it's a profitable business is business, what difference is it is? But then when I look at it, I'm thinking, is that actually my bag? Is that my jam? It's a different type of business.
Yeah.
And I don't think that fits that building on top of the empire you already have.
Yeah.
So I was looking at it purely as, like, it's just another business. We can give it a digital spin, and that's where a growth avenue could come from it. But ultimately it's in a space that's different to what I do.
Yep.
So where I'm at now with the kind of more matured thinking on it, I would not buy that business today, whereas I would have probably bought it 3 years ago, because it's like, I can see how it makes money, I can see how I'd add value to it, therefore let's just buy it. And Callum is a great example of that. He buys businesses, but he's in all different industries as well. And okay, he's got experience in them all, and that's why he's comfortable with it, but I don't think it would be appropriate for me to buy the same type of assets that he buys.
It's like what you said with that book, Richest Man in Babylon. You only
Stick to your lane.
Yeah, stick to your lane, only do what you're good. Because I would be the same if I took something that was like in a plumbing business or plumbing wholesale. I wouldn't have a clue. And I wouldn't, I could go into a business conversation and I would be just lost. Like, I don't know what we're talking about. Going into your kind of side of things, I could maybe do it like a bit of that, because I know a little bit, but I wouldn't know fully. But if it was marketing,
you're good.
Go, ask me anything.
I think you can use that though. There's a hack that I use, and to be honest, it's stolen anyway, but we'll just chuck it out though. I think when you acquire something, you kind of need to think about like how well you run it, right? So it's like now when I'm acquiring something, I'm looking for the driver at the same time. So I kind of look at it like building the deal up. So say for example, I'm thinking, right, I'll buy this marketing agency, but to do that I want to have a marketing specialist in it. So my current way of thinking would be, right, I could share this opportunity with Mark and we could come into this deal together. So I've found the opportunity. I think there's a really good kind of place for us to play here. I bring it to the table for me and you to review it, and then I see where you feel about it. So because of that, I've de-risked the opportunity. I've needed your experience, and your experience is now in the deal. You've now got an asset that you would share with me, and we could basically both make profit on this together. So it's de-risked, and I've actually answered that question. However, the next thing I'd be thinking about is who's running the business. So is there someone within their organisational structure we could use to kind of be the MD, or would we bring an MD in from another company, or should we merge this company with another business and then say, look, Mr. Business 2, you could have a bigger business. When I merge you with this other marketing company, you'll have an Edinburgh and a Glasgow office. You'll still be there, but what I'll do is I will take a proportion of the equity based on the value that I contribute, and that will be owned by my group, which is me and Mark Conley. They're going to be excited that their company doubles overnight. They run the entire entity, the equity's there, and we've just done a deal. So that's where I think that these business builder deals can be complicated, but that's actually a beautiful model. So I've acquired it from one business, given it to another, merged it in flat, secured our equity, and it runs as a group. We've got a driver, value, equity. We've done very little work other than orchestrate how that gets put together, and then effectively we crack on with what we do as a normal day to day, and we check in every now and then saying, do you need support, do you need help, we've learnt this, that, are you guys aware of this, you should be doing that with your customers so we can get more yield on our equity, and you treat it as an asset. That's not something I would have been thinking about previously, because I was thinking like, no, if you buy a company you just need to buy the company. But I've actually done lots of deals like that where there's maybe 6 or 7 players, and it's actually like constructed the deal round where everybody got their end, but you're the person that brought the deal to the table. And the exciting thing about it is once you've done it once, people are kind of going, any other deals like that? Or I'd love to like do that again, like and give up more equity but get like a bigger pie. And you're thinking, somebody has to be that person that builds that type of business up, and I kind of like sitting in that space now. I'm really enjoying the type of conversations, the opportunities, because it's more value for your time. Like you might have one meeting, and that meeting might be worth £1 million, whereas you might have one meeting and it's worth 10 grand, and you're thinking, where should you be spending your time?
It's quite interesting as well. You talk about how to acquire businesses and actually putting it out there that you are an investor, you are looking to buy businesses. Because one of the strategies that I was looking at targeting insolvency practitioners and looking at them to see if there's businesses that are struggling and trying to then go and acquire the businesses. But then delving into it a little bit more, I think it's still probably an opportunity to look at. But somebody was telling me that, you know, maybe out of the 10 businesses, 9 are broken and will go down, and there'll be like 1 that's there.
Maybe even 10. It's, I think of that as you're buying a business with issues when you're doing that.
And
so the question becomes, can you see all the issues?
Uh-huh.
And could you solve all the issues? Now, sometimes you might look at something and you're thinking, that needs commercialisation, they need a technical structure, they need this, they need that, I've got all the answers to this. But that's cool, right? But then what happens if you buy it or buy into it and then you realise they've not paid their VAT for like 2 quarters?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, shit, now I'm 50% liable for that. So you kind of need to look at it as there's the truth they're telling you, there's a truth that's behind that truth, and there's a kind of like, this is the reality where this business is at. However, that's where the true money is getting made, because I think about buying that like flips. So buying like a house that's smelly with issues in it, old carpets, you know, terracotta bathroom, thing just needs some love, but the bones are lovely. That's the best way of getting property. So you might buy that house for, let's say, 15 grand. You put 25 grand into it, you sell it for 90, you're up 50 grand. Brilliant. So I've made 50 grand on a scabby deal that was made to look pretty with 25 grand, and then somebody's really happy and they make it a family home. You can do that with a business. You buy a business for £1 and everybody gets all excited going, oh, they bought a business for £1, oh, they're such a clever business person. You're thinking, yeah, but the reality is, I know and you know that there's bloody debts coming out its eyeballs or serious issues with it. They need to kind of like fix that problem. So yeah, it costs £1 to transact, but actually there's a lot of kind of stuff in there that has to be unpacked and fixed. So I think that's one end of it, and there's a huge opportunity on turning those businesses around. And then the other side of it is you're buying something that's already intrinsically valuable, but then they're going to make you pay, because now it's like, well, my business is worth 1.6 million, so you're going to have to pay 1.6 to take it out of my hands. Or the person's a lunatic and they think the business is worth 10 million because that's just what they think it's worth. And you're like, based on what? Like, it needs to actually be based on something.
And so would you buy a business on the up, or would you buy, like, so maybe not buy a business on the down because there'll be a lot of things broken, or are you trying to buy a business that's maybe just in the middle that's kind of stagnant? What would be your...
I would buy all of them. In a sense. I would though, but
at the one time.
But for different reasons. So I would buy businesses that are on the kind of their deathbed, if I could feel that I could turn them around, and I'd ask the kind of hard questions. So I would still be interested, but it wouldn't be the deals I would seek out. I would also buy businesses that are very valuable, because here's the beautiful thing about this. If, say that business is like saying, oh, I want 1.6 million, right? Okay, so you want 1.6 million. Where's the business plan? Where is the finances? Where is the evidence to show it's worth 1.6 million? Do you know what I can do with that money? I can go to a bank and I'll say, I'll put in 30% of the 1.6 million. I want you to back the 30% as a finance deal. They will underwrite it and I can give that guy his money. So if I could establish that I could pull the 30% out of their business in some way by selling off an asset or the IT element or the whatever, I could buy that £1.6 million deal and then say, there's the 30%, there's the money, he gets his money and he's thinking, I didn't know John had 1.6 million. Guess what? He doesn't. I buy it and then I basically run it more efficiently. I suppress the income because I don't need a salary, so that director salary goes to zero. I get that loan paid back in say 3 or 4 years, and then I'm sitting with a business that's worth 1.6 when I bought it. Now it's worth a bit more. That's a happy days kind of relationship, and it's actually easier to get credit on a business that's healthy. If it's on its deathbed, they'll have already exhausted all these avenues, so it's very difficult to get credit. So you will be buying it for £1, but see the debt, you're going to have to engineer a really clever way of getting the money, because you're not going to get it as a loan. Whereas with a bigger business, you can actually use their business to get the credit, because their business plan is also the same tool you use to raise the credit. And that's what I was talking about, where with Broadband Cloud Solution, when I looked at buying them, I would have actually used the sale of the IT division and by raising capital to basically fund the 30%, amplified into 100%, and then I would have bought out the other directors, and then I would have pushed it forward, either merging it flat or keeping it separated from my businesses. But they're not necessarily the ones I hunt down. The ones I'm hunting down are more like, it's a business that has a brilliant amplitude, like, so it has a great potential of making good money, and I can see how it would fit into markets I've already established, but they're maybe not there. They're missing a commercial model, they're maybe missing like the commercial harness that goes around their software. They're a tech company, they've got a really exciting sort of like space, and they've already done some of the legwork, but they're just missing that kind of commercialization to take it. So if I could get into that company and amplify it, I could have like a great equity stake in it, but it comes with a driver because they're passionate about the brand. They're going to push it harder than I'll push it because it's their baby. And I want to keep that. So I'm like, that's the ones I'm looking for. But what I was trying to say there is, rather than just I'll buy them all as if Mr. Moneybags, it's more like they're different types of opportunity, and I think they have to be assessed differently. But buying the big ones they're actually easier to fund. As long as the person's not like, oh, it's worth 10 million. And you're like, well, on paper it's worth 7. I want 10. Well, you're not going to get 10 because I can't raise the capital to get you 10. But if you look at what we did there, is the 30% came out of the company and 70% came for the finance. So I've actually done deals like that right now where I've looked at companies saying, I want to buy that, and they're saying, yeah, we'll underwrite the 70, and I'm like, that's it's quite surprising to me actually, the amount of money they'll underwrite, and you're thinking, because you're putting 30% of the money in, but nobody's to say the 30% comes for you. So I could go to an investor and say, the 30% in this deal is 600 grand, so I need 200 grand for you, 200 grand for another investor, 200 grand for another investor, and then some of them go, I'll put in 400 grand. Okay, so you put in 400 grand, so I need 200 grand, I'll put in 100 grand, this guy will put in 100 grand, we get the 70%, this is the equity structure, let's do it. Yep, let's do it, bang, you're done, and the company's there. Everybody's happy, and it's not been a case that you've had to like remortgage your house or spend your life savings and stuff. Some of them want to see you've got skin in the game, but a lot of them will accept that ultimately it's going to be these fair hands that do the work. That's my equity. So it's the sweat equity that I'm putting in, not the financial, although it might be a bit of both depending on what you're buying.
So what was your business belter for today?
Business belter for the day is just, I love acquisitions. So I think it's like there's so much I could say about it, but what I would say is, honestly, the best way of growing your company is through mergers and acquisitions. So just bear in mind that you don't need to be the person that builds a business. A lot of people have it in their head that you need to build a company. It's actually much easier to attach yourself to someone else's dream and amplify that. Take your skills and your drive, your energy, your passion, go to someone with the idea and then show them how that by merging with them you could really amplify that. That could be a brilliant way of making revenue, and then you can attach yourself into a pre-existing structure to make your money, and then there's nothing stopping you from having side businesses or lifestyle businesses or other investments out with that. And it's a great way of kind of building up the equity. So I think, remember, you don't need to go it alone. A lot of people have this like superhero syndrome where they think, I need to generate the business for absolutely nothing. Most of the big boys didn't do that. You know, they bought their way in.
I think my business belter would be the understanding that you don't need all that millions and millions of pounds to actually acquire businesses.
Definitely helps.
I think that was one of my big learnings from it, and I think a lot of people probably don't understand that. When actually looking to go and acquire businesses, there's lots of ways to acquire businesses. So I think that was my business belter from it. So I'll wrap up today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today we were talking about acquisition and mergers. As you can see, we were very excited about it. It's a really great way to scale your business, and if this is your long-term business strategy, I feel that this would be a valuable episode for you. As always, please make sure that you like, subscribe and share the content. We're really loving doing these episodes. We really love business belters. We want to just see it grow, and we want you to be part of it. So it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye for him.
Thank you.